Hello and welcome. You're on Friday Double Bill, India's first full-length film review show. Usually this is what we try to do, is basically watch a movie, hopefully, before it releases and tell you whether we think it's a Dekho or Peko in the theatre. But this week is a different week because we watched a movie on a Friday, but we loved it so much that we're starting the show with it. Tell us more about it, Fahad.
Exactly. Well, Yash Raj has a policy of not showing films before Friday, and therefore we're bringing you our review of Dum Lagake Haisha, which released last weekend.
Dum Lagake Haisha, directed by Sharat Kataria, is a small-town family drama placed in Haridwar in Uttar Pradesh. The hero of this film is part of an RSS kind of outfit. His family is going through tough times. The father gets him married off to an overweight girl who is also smarter and more educated than him. The boy thinks he deserves better. The girl still likes him. This film stars, among others, Ayushmann Khurrana, Bhumi Pednekar and Sanjay Mishra. Nostalgia freaks should know is very beautifully set in the early to mid-90s.
You know, Mayank, you're talking about nostalgia. I mean, who would have thought that Kumar Sanu is already nostalgia? But yes, the 90s were an extraordinary age, and Sharat Kataria.
20 years ago, you know.
Exactly,
it is nostalgia,
exactly. Well, it goes to show how we're aging. But Sharat Kataria, as I was saying, is a wonderful writer, director. He worked on a film with me some time ago, and it's just that wonderful nuance in the writing, the delicately observed small town India that he's captured so beautifully. I don't think I've seen a film that captures that kind of nuance in a long time, and certainly not a Yash Raj film, which is all about artifice. And of course, I mean, the cliches of Switzerland abound, but even when they do the Badlands of UP, you know, there's a certain stylized filmy quality. There is no artifice here. There is beautiful production design. The language, the dialogue is just scintillating. Such throwaway lines. What an extraordinary ensemble cast. You know, after the debacle of Hawaizada, Ayushmann Khurrana is back with a bang. And of course, the big revelation, if big is the word I want, is the girl. I mean, she was working as Shanu Sharma, the casting director's assistant, and she gets cast in this film. It's such a wonderful underdog story of this girl, Bhumi Pednekar, who's now, you know, become the toast of the media. What an amazing performance, such a sweet and powerful and strong performance. I was just blown away by the film.
I completely agree with you, Fahad, and that's the reason why we decided to, of course, review this film, even though it's not the current release. Lots of reasons. One, I'm not too sure if Yash Raj is the way they used to be before. I think they are the top-notch film producers in India right now because of the kind of diverse kind of films that they tend to make, and this is it. I don't know when this movie was shot. Okay, so I don't know when it was thought about also. But it's just far too close to Aankho Dekhi, I felt. And I've been told that the art director is the same. Then there's Sanjay Mishra, who is Babuji here, or, you know, whatever, that the typical father he plays. So I just felt that the only thing that was, you know, sort of not getting along with me in terms of my friendliness to the movie was the fact that it's too close to a movie that I loved so much, which was last year. I think the finest film that we saw last year was Aankho Dekhi. And so there's an element of that. But then you take that and then you take a story which is, you know, which can be set anywhere, but it's set in the 90s, and I love that fact. You know, there's a certain nostalgia that all of us have to whenever we grew up. And you know, we made this point before. It's about technology to some extent now, because, you know, I remember a time when we used to do cassettes, okay? And we used to gift each other cassettes with the best songs that, you know, we think, and, you know, especially when you were like dating someone, that's what you gave them, your best songs ever. And here's this guy who's the lead character. He runs a store that does exactly that, does assortment tapes. And that's so beautiful because we've forgotten the time.
That it's completely illegal is just part and
doesn't
parcel
matter
of the thing. This is classic South, you know, small town India, and this is it. And the advent of the CD and the amazement and the horror of these people who, you know, invested their life savings in a tape business. And then you realize it's like people who have, you know, VHS libraries and suddenly realizing, oh my God, we're out of business today.
Everything now, right? And that's what technology does to you. It just changes every few years, and therefore in some form or the other you can define the times you lived in depending on exactly what technology we use. And hey, we were in the tape time, huh?
You know, this is a film, Mayank, that has got such marvelous dialogue, as I keep saying. And some of the best lines are throwaway. They are actually even off camera. There's one where the character has so-called attempted suicide, and the police come because it's a police case. And Sanjay Mishra, the father, is sort of taking away the cop, saying, and he says it off camera, कि मेरा बेटा एक मच्छर भी क्या नहीं मार सकता, वो अपने आप को क्या मारेगा. Now you just have to pick it up. It's almost in the background, but these kind of really scintillating, wonderfully throwaway lines.
It's a word I hate called nuance, but hey,
yeah,
it really applies here.
No, and I mean, there's again an amazing scene between the mother and the bua who are lying on khatiyas outside, and you know, obviously their son and daughter-in-law are now consummating their marriage,
right.
Or so they think, and they're talking about their own sex lives and, you know, the desires that were in them when they were youngsters, and they're kind of envying this daughter-in-law for the fact that she now is enjoying, you know, the pleasures of the flesh. So it's just such a wonderful moments like this. You don't see this happening. There's nothing remotely lascivious. On the contrary, it's so endearing, and I think this is really the mark of a small film with a huge heart.
I think one of the other things that certainly count as my oh my God moment from this film is, given that we are currently being ruled by an RSS political outfit, which is BJP, that's a government in power, and how important is that outfit to us right now. And we rarely see characters who belong to RSS, although it seems if you go to social media, if you go to bureaucracy, if you go to politics, we see them all over the place. So this is one of those rare films where you see a guy who is actually in an RSS kind of outfit. You know, he's like fully doing his kasrat in the morning and, you know, extolling the virtues
and
of
the RSS outfit, including the
knickers, of course,
and doing Kapal Bharti, and saying who are your heroes in life. You know, Shivaji Maharaj, there's
Subhash Chandra Bose,
and Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Yes. So, you know, we rarely see them, and here's this guy who's treated so normally in that setting, because it's really part of the world we live in here.
Absolutely.
And why is it that we don't see them in our films? In fact, Dharmaputra is one film that I remember where the hero was from the RSS, and that was also directed by Yash Chopra. But yeah, I mean, but it's not treated politically. It's treated as something that happens around us, and I thought that was a great oh my God moment.
Obviously, Mayank, there is no question, after how much one has gushed about this film, that this is an emphatic dekho, theatre mein dekho, jaldi dekho. You know, this is a film that was really not promoted by Yash Raj. The opening day collection was 1 crore. The next day it became 2 crores. The third day it became 3 crores, and it's just really taken off. So it's that little film with a big heart, and it has the might of Yash Raj now to push it. Obviously, critics have loved it, and this is a clear case where a tiny little film can just become a big hit.
Well, I completely agree with you, Fahad. I think so far as I'm concerned, as a viewer, all movies don't have to be about the sort of, you know, collections they make on the first weekend. This is certainly not one of those, and I'm so glad the fact that it's actually growing with word of mouth. But even if it didn't, I think this is the kind of film that you could discover many years later and still enjoy it, whether on YouTube or a download, since we were talking about technology right before this. But yeah, I mean, it's a kind of film that's very low on plot, I have to say. You know, there's very little going on besides the fact that, you know, there's a overweight girl and there's a, you know, a guy who doesn't like her, and that they've been forced to get married to each other. So you can't push that too long in that sense. So it's not engaging from that perspective. But as a movie, in terms of things you notice, in terms of things you smile at, in terms of things that you love about any film, which is not always a story, this is one of those. I think you should watch it in the theater for sure.
So last week, Mayank and I reviewed Ab Tak Chappan 2. I said it was a peko, whereas Mayank thought you should watch it on TV pe dekho. But let's find out what the Desi Martini audience has to say.
Ab Tak Chappan 2 is rated at 2.1 out of 5 on Desi Martini. One of the reviewers says the deranged ghost of Ram Gopal Varma looms large over Ab Tak Chappan 2. Desi Martini's verdict said Ab Tak Chappan should have remained sequel-less because this one is a disaster.
Coming up now is our review of the small little film called Coffee Bloom.
Coffee Bloom, directed by Manu Warrior, is a Hindi film set in a coffee plantation in Coorg. The coffee estate in this film originally belonged to the family of a bachelor Bangalore boy called Devanand. This ancestral property had to be sold. It is now owned by a yuppie couple. The husband is an entrepreneur with no experience in the coffee business. The wife is an aspiring artist. After a lot of coaxing, the husband managed to hire Devanand to look after his coffee plantation. Now Dev and the wife go back many years. They used to be together once. This is something the husband doesn't know. Besides Arjun Mathur in the lead role, Coffee Bloom stars Sugandha Garg and Mohan Kapoor.
You know, Mayank, I've been always wondering why people haven't set more films in tea estates and coffee estates, because they lend themselves so cinematically. There's a certain ambience already created, a certain aura of steamy romance, all of that. I was hoping this film would be some of that. I enjoyed the dynamic between the lead actors. Arjun Mathur is actually a very likable guy. Sugandha, I remember from Jaane Tu Jaane Na, and you know, it's good to see her in a lead role. I thought she pulled off her role with quite a lot of aplomb and is really easy on the eye. Mohan Kapoor plays a garrulous, larger than life, over the top character, and he does it with aplomb. So I enjoyed that. And there was this wonderful performance by actress called Ishwari Bose Bhattacharya, who plays the keep of a rich man, and so she calls him Dhoni because he's a keeper. So all this notwithstanding, I think, you know, the film really is a slow, offbeat, meditative film at times. It's unevenly paced, but I have to say, at the end of it, I really did enjoy the film, and maybe I was just in the zone for, you know, after Dum Lagake Haisha, for small films that have a lot of heart.
Good for you, buddy. Like slow, soft, meditative, offbeat. These are words, according to me, that are synonyms for pretentious. And that's what I thought this film was. I mean, there's very little in it in terms of plot to, you know, to keep you engaged. And there's very little in terms of nuances, that other word that we all hate, to keep you engaged in other ways also. So there is a coffee plantation. There are 3 characters. And you're absolutely right in suggesting that we should have more films in those few parts of India that are so beautiful and beautifully kept. One of them is a coffee plantation. The other is a tea estate. And so great, full marks for figuring out where to set your film. But how about figuring out exactly what the story should be too? Because I was really bored by the end of it. There were too many silences in my head and in the film.
You know, Mayank, like I said, I was trying to support small cinema. It doesn't get much smaller than this. This was shot for about 1.5 crore in 22 days, you know, relatively unknown cast. All of that. It also has one of the key elements in the film that is that of a rogue elephant, which you never see. And there's actually a gun goes off. It's that wonderful line from Chekhov, who says that if in the first act you see a gun, rest assured in the third act the gun will go off. Right. And of course, exactly as per Chekhov, the great Russian master, that's exactly what happens, except you don't see it going off. You don't see the elephant. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, there's low budget and then there's no budget. And sometimes, you know, you have to be spend a little money and don't take your audience that much for granted.
Getting on to oh my god moments, Fahad, and I completely agree with you. I mean, it's not just a short film, it's also a very short film, and thank God for that. It's 90 minutes long. And what can you do but appreciate some performances? I thought Sugandha Garg was excellent in the film. She has a quality of not believing that there's a camera around her. Very few actors have that. Although that can't be said for the other one, who you liked, apparently, the one who plays the keep. Because the keeper is called Dhoni. Because, you know, when you have such few characters, the least you can do is make sure that they're very interesting characters. And I was getting bugged every time I saw on the screen. So maybe it's not a poor performance, it's just a poor characterization. But yes, I agree with you. I mean, it's oh my god only for the fact that such a small film actually gets released in the theaters.
Well, obviously, I'm in the zone to support a lot of this small cinema, and I would suggest that if you want to see small relationship-driven films, by all means, go out and watch this in the theater. Otherwise, watch it on DVD or on television. It won't suffer as a result of that, but definitely give it a dekho.
Okay, Fahad, I agree with you. Short, sweet, but according to me, very, very pretentious. But again, it's very hard for them to release a film like this in the first place. And who is going to support it if not the critics? But hey, going to the theatre is a bit much. TV pe dekho.
Against the Sun is based on a harrowing true story from World War II, where 3 US Navy airmen crash land their torpedo bomber in the South Pacific in 1942 and find themselves on a tiny life raft surrounded by open ocean. No food, no water, no hope of rescue. Against incredible odds, these 3 virtual strangers must survive storms, sharks, starvation, and each other as they try to sail more than 1,000 miles to safety. Directed by Brian Falk, this film stars Tom Felton, Jack Abel, and Garrett Dillahunt.
You know, Fahad, these are very, very tough films to make, and I don't say that from a perspective of the production design, because that's pretty easy. You can set it in one lot in a studio, and that can be the C. But very tough from the perspective of the actors, and it can go either way, right? So if it gets an Oscar nomination, then hey, that was the greatest performance ever. And if it doesn't, then who looked at you because you lost all your weight and you tried your best to look like this person who hasn't eaten, who hasn't had any water for days on end? That happens in this case too. So yeah, great. You know, fantastic performances, no doubt, but it leads to what? It's a pretty boring story economy.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mayank. I mean, this is a film about three strangers, 34 days, adrift in a raft. Please tell me we have already seen Unbroken last year.
Movies, yeah.
Before that, Life of Pi. There are so many films right from Hitchcock that have dealt with this subject. What possessed this director, Brian Falk, to actually make a film on this subject? This was shot on the same lot that you're talking about. It's an open-air tank in Mexico where James Cameron shot the Titanic. And, you know, I mean, there is really nothing outside of great performances, of course. If this film was to stand on its alone and say this is it, of course, you know, the sun blistering, the shark attacks, the starvation, the praying for rain, all these elements to hold a film for that long, about 100 minutes with just 3 characters, takes a lot of doing. The director's last credit was directing a cookery show. So there is really not very much, you know, expertise or acumen over here to sustain this kind of thing. So buddy, yeah. I mean, really, exactly, what was he thinking?
Well, I can imagine, Fahad, exactly why they made this film, because it is, after all, a true story. We're all fascinated by true stories of people, like, you know, exemplifying such valor. I was struck particularly by the fact that, you know, even in that situation, these are armed forces people, and they maintain a certain hierarchy. I was struck by the fact that they drink pee, which our, you know, late Prime Minister used to do, Morarji Desai. I was struck by certain scenes that, you know, had the sharks going on here and there, but by and large, man, this movie bored the hell out of me. So I'm sorry, it's a Peko.
Well, I'm going to be more charitable than Peko. I'm going to say Dekho, Zarur Dekho, TV pe dekho, Fursat se dekho, Blu-ray pe dekho. But by all, you do not need to run out and watch it in the cinema halls unless you're a real masochist and want to spend 100 minutes out at sea.
All right, that's for Friday Double Bill this week. Tell us what you think of the show. Tell us what you think of the films. Leave us a comment. We'll get back to you, hopefully.